Oops.
Hello and welcome to the skating lesson. I'm Dave Lees.
And I'm Jonathan Byer, and our special TSL Valentine for today is the one and only Sandra Bezic.
Oh, it's so good to see you, and it's such a miserable day for us.
I know. So Sandra, you're usually good in situations like these. We were watching you on meddling as you were walking us through the situation. It felt like you were our therapist.
Yeah, it was really fun watching the aging process. You know.
Well, you're going to look great in this documentary too, that they're going to come interview about for this one. Oh my goodness. It's really interesting because I do so remember you as a part of that scandal, obviously not a cause of the scandal, but as someone who was sort of living it with us in real time. And I'm curious to get your take, NBC, as this has sort of been coming out, maybe I haven't felt that same connection with sort of the NBC team this time around. I've been watching on Peacock, so I'm streaming without commentary sometimes.
Right.
And I know that those on live feeds elsewhere, I don't know, maybe because it didn't happen in the real time of the competition or something, I feel some more
disconnected somewhat.
Yeah.
Well, it's different, and it's also different. Obviously, it's different for me, but it's also I'm watching some NBC, some CBC. I miss stuff. Like I'm all over the place, so I don't know how NBC is handling it. I know that in our experience, Dick Ebersol, our producer David Michaels, they were so knowledgeable about skating and had been with skating for so many years that they were part of the community and were very, very committed to rooting out the truth. And I don't doubt for a second that the same isn't happening now. And the integrity of the network and the commentators and what everyone has to say is paramount. And so that wouldn't change. And but the other thing that we were taught always was never speculate, never jump on the rumor mill. Don't say anything that you don't know is 100% true, and because things, as change in real time, and you have to be prepared for that. And the situation is just brutal. I think, like you both, completely deflated. I was so saddened 20 years ago to witness what I was witnessing, because I was sitting there getting the spidey sense of knowing something's going on and thinking, here we go again. And now 20 years later, here we are faced with a different situation, but to me, it's still all connected. Mm-hmm. And I think it's connected for the public.
Yeah, I agree.
It's so sad.
In my opinion, because you had a great point. We were talking obviously earlier today about how you felt that the changes after 2002 were cosmetic. Yeah. And I think that you really hit the nail on the head. I think that this is what happens when nothing is ever dealt with. And I think a lot of people are comparing it to 2014 and the spidey sense they had during the Olympics. Yeah.
Well, look, we made cosmetic changes. I'm not saying that the scoring system didn't need an update, but the changes that were made, in my opinion, were purely cosmetic. They didn't ever address the root of the problem, which is the culture of shrugging at corruption. And that is our history. And, it's like, well, it happens in skating. Oh, it's human nature. Well, of course it's human nature. It is. But then you put in all the possible deterrents, all the possible consequences, so that at least it can be controlled as much as it possibly can be, so that the body, the community, can trust our governing bodies. And I'm not sure that even since 2002, anybody really feels any true trust. because everybody's, if you see Didier walking down the hall a couple years later, how can you trust the situation, right? I mean, if 98 had been properly investigated in after Nagano, 2002 wouldn't have happened the way it happened. Something might have happened, but not in that way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in my opinion, the culture is a breeding ground, and then you add the bigger whole Olympic doping thing on top of it. It's just, we're right, like we're sitting ducks.
Yeah,
and it's
yeah, and the judge from Russia, Alla Shahovskaya, who was Valentin Paseyev's wife, who, the head of the federation for many years, was involved in the scandal in 2014. It all connects.
It just all connects. I mean, Paseyev was back around when I was skating, I think, at least when Barbie and Paul were skating, and they were in there and meddling. That, the documentary that Tara and Todd made was fantastic. And that was sort of the surf. I mean, they went in depth, but it was still the surface of our history. And yet, we don't want to be labeled that way. Of course, we don't want to be labeled that way, because as I texted to you earlier today, you've got Nathan Chin and all the men who were standing on the podium, and you've got Gabby and Guillaume from last night, and all the dancers who were just so brilliant. And so you want so badly to honor them and applaud them and support them, and we know they're clean and earnest and doing all the right things. And then you've got this other side, which I think I called our underbelly, and so I think so many of us are just in this tug of war, and this emotional tug of war with ourselves.
And it's interesting, Sandra, sorry to interrupt, Dave. Something that I think meddling was so good at pointing out was they almost tried to do nothing. They almost tried to do this sort of like, yes, let's just keep going and we'll figure this out.
Perfect. And it'll just go away. Yeah.
But the federation was pushing, right? That's really when the Canadian Federation sort of stepped up.
Pushed, but there was also some push within the Olympic Association and some push towards the ISU, clean your house or you're out.
Okay.
And I'm familiar with that story as well. And so there was the push on either side, and then there was the press, and it was also in your face at the moment that it was unavoidable. But was it ever really properly investigated? Did it really ever reveal exactly what happened? The Russian mafia story and the this and the that. Like, come on. Were the Russians ever given any consequences of any of any import, right? I mean, so
I'm just curious because especially in the team event here, the United States, Japan, Canada all have a medal to gain if they were to push, but they all seem to have collectively taken a back seat, and then maybe just a general, statement from their Olympic committee that says they're disappointed and they prefer clean sport, but no one seems to be aggressive.
I mean, let's hope that in the back rooms there is a plan to be aggressive. I mean, it has to be thoughtful, it has to be legal, it has to be all of that stuff, and it also has to work, because even the whatever happened yesterday and the mix between legalese and what is truly just. I mean, what is truly just didn't happen. And the idea of protecting this poor minor, well, that didn't happen for years.
Right.
She was abused. She tested positive. Where was the protection then? And so, it was really, in my opinion, the responsibility then to protect all the other athletes in the event, the sport, the Olympic ideal. all of that, you know, but so it wasn't a just decision. Might be legal, I don't know.
It's that tough time because, you know, we sometimes refer to the Olympics like people that only go to church at Christmas or something like that.
Yeah.
and we love that people come to the sport, even if it's every 4 years. And so comes these journalists also. And it's a tough thing. You just can't help but wonder if someone more informed, like the video output that Dave is doing with As the Blade Turns, has all the information, all these sorts of things. And then so many of these big news outlets, they're just sort of fluffy headlines and generalities and sort of things. And I feel they're not helping, it seems.
No, but that's true across the board, isn't it? Not just in sport and in figure skating and politics, like all of it. That is media now. You have to be very, very careful about where you get your information and what you read and what you believe. And so now there's all of that noise going on as well. It's complicated.
It is distressing to, you know, hear from reporters that only cover the sport every 4 years and not doing their homework, and they want like a quick, you know, cliff notes.
They want this soundbite. Right. And then moving on into, you know, to the next scandal.
And my heart goes out to the other girls, not even just because it's clean versus, you know, doping, but also we remember talking to people in Lillehammer when they were like, we didn't know where we were because it was so Tanya Nancy focused.
Right.
And how could they train? How could they center themselves? And I think we see the same thing here, everyone imploding in practice now because there's such a hysteria and a strange energy going around.
Well, of course, you're taken away from your center on a you know, much smaller scale. Towards the end of my career, I, you know, was having physical, emotional 17-year-old meltdowns and missed a competition and sat in the stands and watched. And that was the first time I really saw the manipulation of judging at that time. And the corruption, and that completely deflated me. Now, all of these athletes who are going in to compete, you know, for their moment, all these young women and then the pairs to follow, now have that to deal with. Where, you know, does it really matter what they do? Does it really matter who's clean, who's not? If it's, I mean, I think, Dave, you tweeted, if there's a mouse, there's mice.
Yeah, well, in my opinion here is that because there will be no medal ceremony after the event, if Kamila Valieva is in the top 3, it makes tomorrow's event almost an exhibition that will be decided months later. And unfortunately, this is going to be one of those asterisks of, for the people that competed there at dinner parties for the rest of their life, it will be, did you compete at that event with a girl who doped, right? And because everyone is going to remember this. And unfortunately, there's no winning tomorrow. I think that maybe there'll be a bump in the ratings because of human nature. Everyone wants to see what's going to happen, right?
It's a lousy reason to have great ratings, isn't it?
Of course. Yeah. And who knows if they'll even be that great, but I do think
I mean, I think a lot of people might, but a lot of people might just turn it off. Just say, I mean, there's two schools of thought there. I mean, you want to support the skaters themselves because they are the victims, all of them.
When the sport was dented after 2002 with what happened with in Salt Lake City, where do you think we are now? Because if you look at the other countries in the podium, USA, Japan, and Canada, those are 3 countries that have Grand Prix. Those are 3 revenue centers for the ISU. Japan especially, if Japan is off to skating, I mean, Korea left after 2015. But
okay, this is off the top of my head, but if the right thing happens, with a country that dopes, that it's known doping issues, and they're removed, then don't we have a fair competition? I mean, the other countries that nobody else is doing that, as far as I can tell. So, I mean, oh my God! I mean, there's so many layers here, because it's also, we're talking about children and abuse and all. I mean, there's so much that has to be
the coach
fixed.
Of the year.
The coach of the year, and we all knew, and I think I implied this with you guys once before, in other interviews where I don't, wasn't, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look over there and say, at least there is emotional abuse, at the very least. And why even that? I mean, don't we know better? For what? For who and for what? And these poor, beautiful, talented girls, just completely disposable. And then what do they do with the rest of their lives? And who's helping them? I mean, it's hard enough when you have all the support in the world to manage the pressures at that age, and it's just heartbreaking. So you start there, and then the idea of doping, as you said, for who, for what, to what end?
Right.
Yeah.
Over a game.
Over a game.
It seems,
and
odd.
it's adults. I think what Paul Martini said in Meddling was brilliant, because the people who do this, if they had experienced what the athletes experience themselves, they would never consider that. I mean, you look at a doctor who, I mean, why is that doctor even there? Wasn't he banned in 2007 in a completely different sport, and then involved in other
and an anesthesiologist,
incidents?
Sandra? He's an anesthesiologist there to protect the...
What's he doing in an ISU arena? I mean, shouldn't there be zero tolerance?
Right.
You don't get a second chance in that. You don't get a second chance when you mess around with somebody else's life like that. And so why is he there? Why did we, figure skating community, allow that? I mean, someone told me that he tried to infiltrate the NHL through Russian hockey players, and I was told that it was just nipped in the bud, just stopped right there, because there's a well, I don't know, I know nothing about hockey, so I'm completely speaking out of turn here. I'm just repeating what I was told, but there's a system in place to look out for stuff like this.
Right.
And so, and they're a professional body, and that's, I think, where we fall apart. We're not operating like a professional body.
Yeah, I think the scary part is I was thinking about what steps the ISU could take, because right now this is really with the IOC and the bigger body, but it does trickle down for the next 4 years. And it's scary, because obviously, does this skater be able to go to the World Championships? Is she be able to retain her European title? I think if skating has any credibility, in my opinion, I would deem that win ineligible. I would deem the World
Europeans, also needs to be retroactively stripped.
And well, exactly. And we don't know, we'll never know how far back this goes, when this started for her and for other younger. We'll never know the truth. And so, I mean, I haven't thought this through to have an opinion, and I'm not a broadcaster anyway, so I haven't gathered my information or my facts. And I haven't, I mean, I can't imagine Kamila even skating. I mean, they're talking about irreparable damage, putting her out there. And if she wins and stands on top of the podium and isn't given a medal, what kind of damage is that? If she falls apart, what kind of damage is that? Isn't the best thing to do is take her home and give her care? I mean, there is no good here. So which is the best? And then to me, the most important thing would be to protect all the other competitors and just remove this situation so that they can have the day that they've worked their lives for. So, I mean, that's just me.
I think you're not alone.
Yeah.
I think we got into a weird war of optics where Kamila had been pulled out of the practices. And it was very interesting because I had a conversation with my coach, and before it was official that the name was Kamila Valieva, she had not been seen at practice in days. And from what we know about her camp, that is highly unusual. Then it seemed that they put her in front of the cameras for practice in order to make a statement, in order to say, look, she's skating, almost, try to yank her off the ice and see what will happen, is kind of the feeling I'm getting. But I think it's very interesting that we saw her walking through the media mix zone by herself. Her coaches could have gone there.
I know. What kind of coach does that?
Yeah. With the hood over her face, with, the
Or,
reporter.
I mean, was that all stage two? I mean, I would imagine that everything is calculated. Mm-hmm. And maybe even the doping minors, and knowing that they aren't held accountable in the same way. I mean, maybe that was, maybe they thought that through too. I don't know. I mean, I'm speculating. I'm not a broadcaster anymore. Stop me.
You've announced that you're speculating. I mean, that's different. I mean, the real conspiracy theorists are now going to look at why Junior Worlds was postponed. Until May.
Well, no, I mean,
Think about this, Jonathan. Team Tuberitsa has several minor athletes eligible for the Junior Worlds, and now we know that minors can't be held accountable.
So when she is investigated, because apparently the whole camp will be investigated, what does that happen to all her students in the meantime?
Well, it was interesting. That she might not be able to go to competitions, and I don't know what this means for the rest of their camp. It depends who's named, because I would name the assistants, but I worry that they wouldn't. I worry that if they just stop with Terry Tuberitsa, Dr. Shevetsky, the federation, and don't go lower, she could still work as a camp, within Russia, just be seen at Russian competitions and within their allies. The Rodchenkov Act, she couldn't go to the US or any places where we have extradition treaties for. So she couldn't go to Skate Canada. She couldn't go to visit her daughter in Michigan, her vacations in Miami, and whatever other federations. Yeah.
And then someone else said to me, what if she didn't know? What if it was just the doctor and she just trusted the doctor like the skaters did, and she didn't really inform herself? What if she didn't know?
Well, I hope there's no.
And is that a defense? I mean, I guess there's that possibility, isn't there?
Someone's going to get thrown under the bus. But I mean, that's the only thing, is they talked about this act that allowed the U.S. to press charges or do this sort of thing. I mean, obviously nothing would ever come from it, except she wouldn't step foot in North America again, I guess.
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe Japan.
Well, but you see, I mean, if I mean, I don't know. I mean, when you carry it further, if it depends on what the mandate, the country mandate is, and maybe she's disposable too. If the skaters are disposable, just thank you very much. Next.
If I am being my most catty and snarky, I hope the choreographer had something to do with it, so we don't have to see that choreography anymore.
No,
and that's I'll
terrible.
just leave it at that.
That's terrible. Let's talk about the dance event.
Segueing seamlessly into. But you're right. My heart goes out. I thought the dance event was this amazing event, and it's a little sad that it got eclipsed, of course, on this news. But there were some really stellar moments happening. Yeah.
And just spectacular. One team after the next, and polar opposites. The Ice Dance Academy of Montreal, whatever they're called, Murray, France, and Patrice and team. Oh my God! Mm-hmm. One team after another, each unique. Each impeccable, each produced in a way that complemented all their strengths and pushed skating forward. Everything felt so contemporary. And then, shout out to Hugo Chouinard and Mathieu Caron, who dressed them all. Everyone different, everyone beautiful, everybody's body looking the best they could possibly look. Oh my God, it was so spectacular. And in a way, it made a lot of the other teams, to me at least, almost seem dated. With their
they did
work.
Seem outdated. And the fear, of course, when a camp becomes so dominant, right, is the fear that formula, just everyone is going to have that same quality, but they don't. The formula was the quality, the level of quality, not, and the individuality was part of the formula, is part of the formula, and the expertise, the quality, the skating ability, just and the power. The emotional power that they all seem to have, and the women. She's really worked on the equality between the partners, they collectively. It's so impressive, and I'm so happy for Gabby and Guillaume to have the moment that they had. And again, it was impeccable, and it was it was so sophisticated, so glorious, and such a wonderful idea to put him in a red shirt. It's just like so fabulous bold, idea after fabulous idea.
I was interested, I watched the On Edge series, and when we first started to cover the I Am school, as they're now referred to, there was a season where they were less differentiated, and they've brought in outside voices continually.
You have to.
We see Sam Chouinard, we see there are other choreographers working. Romain is doing more work, and it's more divvied up.
Well, you have to. Nobody can do that much work and be fresh. God knows, even when I try to be fresh, I sort of look, I just did the same damn step. That happens. And so bringing in the right teams for each and giving them that special attention, and they all feel special, you can tell, and they have such pride in their work. It's
Well, I want to know, what do you make of Olivia Smart and Adrian Diaz? We know that you do shows in Spain. And
I know. I didn't get to meet them because I didn't go back to Madrid for our final shows the year that they did the show, and I didn't get to meet them. Although, Sarah and Kirill are have done the show as well, and they're beautiful. I loved them. I loved Zorro, and it's like sound effects were in there and everything. She's pretty darn spectacular, and I think even like putting her in green instead of the typical whatever you would typically put with Zorro, I guess red. I loved it. I loved them. I loved the free dance. I thought it was brilliant.
We spoke to her recently, and she was saying that when they told Patrice about the music, he said, well, it's cheesy. But I thought Moulin Rouge was cheesy at the same time.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I remember actually Tessa and Scott, I think one or the other, I think maybe Scott, said to me, well, Marie-France and Patrice think Moulin Rouge is cheesy. And I think collectively but if you believe in it, and I mean, you can turn around a cheesy idea and make it fresh. I mean, yeah, sure you can. I mean, anything is possible, right?
And it made them stick out. Do you know what I mean? They were a team that could get lost in that, like anywhere from 8 to 12 or, below. But it's suddenly, you can say that Zorro program.
Exactly.
And I think especially it helped them really in getting to the Olympics. Because Sarah, although beautiful, theirs was sort of more general.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, some of the teams that aren't working in Montreal, in addition to at times being outdated, they also lack, which one are they? They're the ones that. And I didn't get...
A little bit.
Yeah, it was just sort of general. And this was such a specific idea. I thought it definitely culminated at the end, of course, with their sword fight was the most exciting. But I was thrilled because they're a team that could have gotten excited maybe and had some issues. So I was really glad to see that they sort of kept it together and were able to enjoy that moment. And I wonder if for some of these teams, we talked about it with the men, who benefited maybe a little from a lack of audience energy, and that it helped them stay in their body a little bit more.
One would think that, when one would think that a great coach would plan for that. And even if you didn't make the number back when you were creating the numbers for an empty house, you would start to adapt it and make it and adapt the training in a way that you were working for camera instead of an audience, right? I mean, that's what I would have done. And that's what I do. You work for a camera or you work for the audience, like you know who your audience is, you figure that out. And then you play to that. So I would imagine that that's what they did, and then that would have been part of their training. I mean, some people need an audience certainly more than others. Some it doesn't matter. I think Nathan could do either, no question. Right. I mean, he lights up in front of a crowd, and he clearly doesn't need a crowd. I mean, it's always going to affect things, but you got to train for the situation. You just do.
Yeah.
It can't be an excuse.
What'd you think about Fear and Gibson? So they kind of were on a rise. What'd you think about Fear and Gibson with the Lion King? They were on such a rise with their Madonna program. This year they tried... Okay,
so now you're talking to me like I know what I'm talking about here. I don't watch
Sandra,
a lot of skating.
Ideas, programs.
But I don't know what they did last year. I saw I have no idea what they did last year.
I would say that they did a Madonna program. It was very well received. Now they did the Lion King program. Some people loved it. Some people thought maybe it missed the mark a bit.
Well, look, I would personally have a tough time with Lion King. However, I thought they had an amazing lifts. I mean, I was actually texting David Wilson about their lifts, going like, those are spectacular. And I'm sort of thinking, I need to watch those so I can steal them. They just seem young to me. And so this is a stepping stone. And so therefore, I think the choice is kind of neither here nor there in this stage of their career. It's about the experience and the performance and all of that worked, right? I mean, obviously they have to mature with their material.
Yeah, it was interesting because And the only reason like this sort of lower level team got so much attention in the past was because this Madonna program had sort of gone viral in a pop edgy sort of way that I think we were all excited to see what kind of edgy material they may come up with. And then it was a little bit generically
surprising.
Cinematic.
Yeah. Okay. I understand. I didn't
almost
know.
Seemed safe. Almost seemed like they're more interesting than this particular music allowed them to be, I feel.
Okay. I did not have that reference. So I just sat thinking that they were a young team with their, just starting to move forward. And this seemed like a very young choice.
Yeah.
To me.
I thought it was a good idea, but the Madonna program was executed so perfectly for this team that it was hard to be as special, right?
Right. Well, it's always hard to follow something great.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get into that with Chock and Bates too. I would imagine as a choreographer, when you've known you and your skater have really knocked it out of the park, the next season is daunting because what about that worked? Yeah.
No kidding. I mean, it keeps you up at night. It's awful.
Because do you try to just do something so different to prove it can be different, or do you try to capitalize on what was working before?
It depends. It depends on the versatility of the skater. It depends. It's really hard at the best of times to come up with the idea and then stick with it and see it through. So you have to trust your knowledge, trust your gut, trust your relationship with them. It's an impossible time to make those decisions. But I think it's really important to involve the skaters, certainly when they're a little bit older too, because that collaboration is what makes the product unique. I know that, for myself, with some of the skaters, I was just so intimidated by their talent. It's just so scary to live up to their talent. When I get on the ice with Kurt or it's just Brian before the Olympics, it was just like, I'm going to choke. So, you just forge ahead and hope you have a good idea.
I thought that even though it was more classical and perhaps, not as modern, I thought that Hawaii and Baker's program really nailed the mark in terms of
and I confess, I know their program. I did not see their performance yesterday. I was flipping back and forth and I missed it. And I even tried to look at it today, but it's not up on YouTube. I'm a fan. Their skating quality is amazing. He reminds me of Robert Wagenhofer. Remember him? Just that cat-like and the deep edges. I when I saw it previously, I thought it was beautiful, and I think they're beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. So Jonathan brought it up. The Alien astronaut romance program. It commanded attention. Some loved it. Some. My mother didn't understand it, but she certainly texted about it, that she wasn't sure what it was, but she thought they were talented, but she thought
it was something.
See, good art provokes. She was provoked. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
She didn't hate it. She said she thought that they were talented, but she didn't understand what was happening both times that they did it. So, yeah.
Well, I think with both pieces, they really gave themselves an identity and they made themselves memorable, and they capitalized on their differences, their physical differences. I mean, he could be an astronaut, and she just went with her exotic beauty, and so that to me was quite fun. It was really entertaining. and it gave them an identity. And I think for that, it was great. And the dress. Oh my God. Oh. I texted Matt too. He said, it was 120 hours. It was couture. It was couture. And it was part of it. It was, her makeup, all of it. And it was pristine too. I mean, it was not kitschy or sticky, and it could have been in a heartbeat, right? It could have gone south really easily, but they didn't let it go south. They really made something of it. And then they performed it with such authenticity. I enjoyed it.
It's an interesting thing, of course, with the team event now, because I felt they really sort of had their big Olympic moment in the team event, in the free dance. Mm-hmm. The energy was just a little bit different, a little bit more aggressive, but yet settled. Mm-hmm. And with positions 2, 3, and 4 kind of in this close race here. Yeah. When they started with the opening lift, it was still beautiful, but I just, as a viewer, got a little unsettled because I felt maybe they weren't as in their bodies or as at ease as they were when they started the team event.
I wonder also if it was the second time we saw the number. Mm-hmm. And it's the first time has such a powerful impact. And so there could have been a bit of that too. But I think in the circumstance, maybe they were just a touch more cautious. I don't know.
They have a really cool section of the program that I noticed at the beginning of the season, and then in person, they do a lift, and I think it's their curve lift where she's, down, laying over his boot, and then they go into the dance spin. I mean, there's just like a whole brilliant section, and really using edges and curves, and it's really interesting.
It was really smart and intricate and beautiful and original. So many, as you said, original positions, original treatment, and fun. I mean,
And it was interesting looking at the scores with the second, third, and fourth place teams here in the free dance. No one really knew what to do. It was so decisive on the tippy top. But we're looking like Italy had Chock and Bates in second, France, Ukraine, Canada, USA had them all third. There was a lot of jostling going on. They didn't quite know where to put everybody.
Well, that's because they're all so close together. And you could argue in each of the different 3 ways, couldn't you? Mm-hmm. In different parts of the program. And I mean, the Russians... they stepped it up in the main event compared to the team event, and their looseness was impressive. On the other hand, then it can look sloppy and a little bit too free and a little bit messy compared to the pristine of the other pairs or teams. And then their last minute, it's just like, to me, the last minute of their program, I don't mean to be harsh because they're lovely, lovely people. But their last minute, I should have taken them off the podium. I mean, it's just, what was that?
Right. It felt like they went from a very classical, I don't know the arrangement, if it was what happened.
The arrangement from a musical standpoint was upsetting. That version.
The rock or the
the rock.
So the rock sounded different to me, and the last minute almost felt like we were in Riverdance at the end. I don't know what
it's Paganini. It's the variation on a theme from Paganini, but in this jiggy fiddle. It was
It was like the guy who goes out and plays the violin with Plushenko. That's right. Shows, right? I wish I met them when they did Katya's show in Lake Placid several years ago, and they were with Marina then, and they were just kind of starting up, and they were just falling in love, and they were glorious and beautiful. I really wish they had stayed with Marina. I really do, because I just think that they deserve that kind of sophistication. And the last minute of that program just ripped apart any hope of sophistication, in my opinion.
No, but yeah, you make an interesting point, because I remember when you've been on the show before, you say the material matters most when everyone is skating well.
Yes.
And here, everyone overall was skating well. So then
really,
when it
really well.
does come down to the material, and you're seeing finesse and complex movements, and as Scott pointed out, some of the Russian lifts were his beginning lifts, and some of the
and he also said that
moments.
he said the free program was smoke and mirrors. I mean, he was pretty blunt. And I do remember back in the day, Russians saying that they purposely wore lots of, chiffon drapey things and hair flowing all over the place to hide, to make it look more complicated, and to hide errors and mismatches and that. I mean, they actually said that. And I think these two didn't need that. I mean, they're so beautiful, and their edges and their speed and all of that, like they could do more, and they could be more pristine. I mean, the first 3 minutes, were pretty darn beautiful. It just kind of went then poof.
Yeah, I agree with you that I thought that they had the fourth best overall package last night in terms of performance. And you're a woman who loves power. What do you make of Running Edge, Hubbell and Donohue?
Oh my God.
Okay.
I love that the what's it called now? I was going to say the OD. What's
the rhythm dance? The rhythm dance.
Rhythm dance. Wow. Because I hadn't seen it before. And again, David and I were texting during the team event, like, oh my God, that was so fierce, so fantastic. I admire everything that they've done. I thought they were spectacular. I thought their choices were brilliant. The free dance poignant. It worked.
It's interesting because we've gone back and forth. I have always loved this team because, especially in person, to see them just take up every inch of that ice at 8 million miles an hour is just so impressive. And I just always wondered, because to me, they're like a triple axling Midori Ito early 90s kind of energy. And I always wondered in dance how they could have capitalized that in sort of a program that sort of embraced and celebrated that athleticism. They seem
they did in the rhythm dance.
Yes, exactly. And then they go sort of introspective sometimes with the free dance material, which I think almost apologizes for their tremendous power instead of celebrating it a little bit more.
No, I didn't really sort of see it that way. I thought that was also who they are.
It's clear because they seem to gravitate towards
their power. Yeah, with their power. And to be, I mean, it was not ethereal. They are not ethereal. They are earthy.
Right.
And, you can grab them and you feel like you can relate to their experience. I think with Gabby and Guillaume, they're untouchable.
Right.
Like Gordeev and Grinkov, sort of, which is brilliant in itself. But these two are, earthy, sensual, and just grabbable. And so, I mean, that's why I liked the contrast of the two pieces, and I liked that it showed their different sides, but I also really, really loved their connection, the connection between the two of them. And Scott said something that really moved me about the way Zach was looking at her, like never wanting this moment to end. And I just, that gave me shivers, because it's like, that's how he was looking at her.
And I love that they're the ones, sorry, Dave, that they took advantage of that new lift opportunity. Because again,
the lift,
because even though I know they got it was a time deduction, if I'm understanding correctly, not the elbow deduction, but the fact
it was a time deduction.
That they're so powerful, and they are the ones that said, we're going to be remembered by doing this cool thing.
Yes, and it was so great. And who else did the overhead lift? Was that, because there was another beautiful lift. Was that Zorro?
Well, maybe. There was
another,
the one I remember.
Or was that in the rhythm dance? Was that? No, it can't be. There was one other really great lift from a dance team over these last 10 days. I don't know.
I know.
I'm a fan now, okay, for these Olympics. I'm not taking notes. But there was
it's better
another
you
lift.
Experiencing. Yeah, okay.
Maybe
I mean, Piper and Paul do the one where she's on his head, but
I'll track that lift down.
Okay.
It could have been a pair.
I forgot to
it was a reverse lift.
When I asked you about Stepanova Bukin, I had gotten this as a gag for Megan Duhamel, everyone, and it came today. So I decided to wear it. I thought that I was going to rib her during when we did the TV show, and it came a week late. And I thought, I saw it on the internet, and I thought, how perfect would it be for Megan and Paul?
That's so perfect. It's so perfect.
A week later.
So the back of my shirt says Sapporo 72.
Oh.
And I don't know. So
amazing.
And so I was in a store here in Toronto several years ago, just a sporting goods store, and I went, Sapporo. It was just right there for no particular reason. So I bought one in white and one in red. So there you go.
Did your Olympics have any scandals?
Oh gosh, I was 15, speaking of 15-year-olds in the Olympics, so I don't really remember. No, but we were just before the huge media explosion too, 72. I think it really kind of took off in 76. Okay. Bigger. I mean, I guess 68 with Peggy, but I don't know. So long ago. It's too long ago.
The scandal was Janet Lynn sitting down on that spin. That was the scandal.
Oh, and everybody fell in love with her. She became a massive star in Japan for smiling when she fell. They fell in love with her, adopted her, and for years and years and years, she was a huge star there. And it was so sad. But I mean, she's the greatest of all time.
So let's talk about Gabby and Guillaume, because you've talked about how they were ethereal. This particular free dance has had an evolution throughout the season.
I haven't. This is the first time I've seen it.
Did it hit for you? So to me, last night, it hit more than it has throughout.
Oh, it hit me.
Okay.
It hit me because of the sharpness that they infused, the motifs, the motifs that they infused. It wasn't just a bunch of pretty. It wasn't just ethereal. They are just by nature ethereal skaters. That is, especially, I mean, he's more gritty, but especially Gabby. But it was the intricacies and the layers and the tempo changes and the snaps and those bites that I thought were just so beautiful.
There were almost details they didn't even have to do, but then by incorporating them, that twizzle, which I loved, maxed out the score. You could not have gotten, but each musical thing had like just the hands on the hip on the exit.
Exactly. Everything. There were just layers and layers, and then just the way they would move from, hold to hold to hold, and just like butter, and just always in perfect tracking, but with a freedom and an authority. Like there was never a doubt. It wasn't a defensive program. It wasn't performance. It could have been. God knows it could have been after all of this weight. It was just so trained and so on the mark. I think like a ballet dancer, like a great dancer on stage, don't you think? I mean, it was just so on point.
And it captured just that amazing emotional quality. Even before they began, you kind of knew they were going to be okay, almost in a way, because they just gave you the body language that they were settled. But I love it when it seems like they commissioned a piece of music to match their choreography, because everything was so well blended, as opposed to these are difficult requirements. And for them to fit over certain musical moments is a big ask, but they found the perfect marriage between the two. They found it.
And it didn't look like requirement to requirement, not for a second. And that's just so hard to do. I mean, they're obviously one of the greatest ice dancers of all time, and will leave an indelible mark on,
it felt like a 30-second program. I blinked and I was like, oh, is it the second half? Yeah.
You're right. And they, elevated the whole event, but all those other skaters training with them became elevated. I mean, that is also the beauty of the school. Because I know I was on the ice with them twice. Once we did a little bit more for the show in Korea for Yuna. And just being on the ice with them, just makes you better. It makes you want to be better. It makes you want to live up to their genius.
So how about the rhythm dance though? Because this was interesting how they brought, whacking from the early 90s drag culture. I thought that was interesting, clever, authentic to who they are.
Yes.
Very effective.
So smart, because this style isn't automatically suited to their style of skating, street. And any, like, street, if you're going through for hip hop and all of the sharp movements, is kind of contrary to their natural lyrical style. And it's also really hard to put on the ice. So, we all know that. And then for them to find the whacking and use that just was so smart and so interesting, because it's unique, it's authentic to him, and coming out this year, and it said so many things. And nobody had ever done it before. It was just like, yes, what a great idea. And yet, with all the sharpness of the whacking, they were still able to be lyrical beneath and be true to themselves beneath.
Yeah.
So,
it's
smart.
Interesting for me, this rhythm dance category. I understand they were trying something modern, trying to keep current. It was sort of a miss for me as a viewer in general. So a lot of times I was looking for who almost came up with the most creative solutions to what I viewed as kind of a problematic assignment.
It is,
They had one of the most creative solutions. I thought Marina gave Daisuke also a very effective program. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see it here, but we'll see it at Worlds. But those two in particular, but the French solution was so brilliant. I thought that it deserved all the points. Yeah.
And Maddie and Zach.
Also, but they almost went exactly with what it was. They just happened to be able to do it really well. I think the assignment.
Well, they capitalized on their strengths and really drove it home.
Yeah.
I can't remember that. Pardon me? Piper and Paul?
Piper and Paul, they're the kind of the quirky team every year. And what did you make of their material?
I felt like they felt the pressure of living up to their own material this year. I felt that it wasn't as beautiful. I mean, they unfortunately didn't skate it well last night. I thought they did a really good job in the team event, and it was refreshing in the team event, I thought, but last night it was heavy. someone said to me that there was sort of, it was almost like a sense of sadness, and maybe that was because of the mistake. It's sort of, so that was too bad. But I did feel that it's just hard to live up to something as wonderful as their Vincent was. And it was, I've been there. I know when you're trying to do the same, only different, it's tough.
Yeah. I think they tried to do the same, only different now for all 4 years because it's been working. But this time for me, it was the least effective.
Well, I mean, I don't mind people who are staying true to themselves. It's just, there's always been the complaint about Gabby and Guillaume that they're not, as versatile as some of the other teams or whatever. It's like, who cares? If
I agree.
If you're really good at something, why do you want it? If you're versatile, great. But if you're not versatile, but you're really great at this, then give us this. And that's what Gabby and Guillaume have always stayed true to themselves. And so I think it's important for Piper and Paul to have stayed true to themselves. It's just, I think they must have felt a pressure with that. That's just me, observing. I don't know.
My music, and I just thought that this music was not as impactful as
they should have used the original.
Yeah.
I mean, the original is emotional. This one, sometimes when you overproduce a piece that is, it just loses, it loses its touch, its earthiness, its authenticity. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, Streisand album, when it's overly done in her later years, it's like
you lose the core of what's the point of it. Yeah. And what's interesting though is like Dave and I first started covering them like 2014 with the Hitchcock program, which I will always bring up. He's chasing her around the ice. It's this incredible horror story.
The film noir kind of thing.
Yes, and I loved it. I always felt that they were underscored. They had big shadows over them in Canada at the time with Weaver and Poget and Virtue and Moyer, and I always felt they were underappreciated. And then they kind of softened their quirkiness, became a little more accessible, I felt, to the judges, and then they started seeing the results, so I felt they stayed in that genre, but I missed some of that quirky fire. Yeah, because it's not celebrated in dance.
If they felt they needed to do that, and I'm wondering now if maybe if they had stayed in their quirky genre, would everybody have caught up to them? Like, would the judges, would everybody have caught up to them?
I mean, that world medal came with sort of the more accessible, easy to understand program, but it was the unique, interesting ones that may have been off the podium, but they were the ones I was always talking about.
The memorable ones, yeah. I also think it's unfair to judge a program when it's not skated the way they wanted to skate it. I think because I know for myself, I can make something, and if it's not skated like I know the skater can skate it can look like nothing. It can evaporate.
Yeah.
Or it can be magical. And so I think it's not fair because they were off last night. They just were.
Yeah. And they're in a really deep field. There are so many teams, about 6 teams that could get the bronze medal, and
of which they were one,
of which they've been consistently. But you look at the Italians, there are, the Americans, there's, Stepanova and Buchan. I mean, it's a really tight field. I mean,
they're good. They have amazing potential.
Stepanova and Buchan.
Yeah.
I've always enjoyed them. I like their look, and they can always give a performance it was just compared to some of the other teams in person, they seem a little smaller and don't cover as much ice and maybe not as fast, but their commitment to the performance, especially when we've had Latin rhythms in the rhythm dance and things like that, they really can sell.
See, I haven't watched ice dance in a few years. So
when I see them, I'm going to
last Sandra. Olympics, maybe.
How do I say this delicately? I think that they could really use a trip to Marina. You know,
oh God! Now you're gonna be quoting me. I'm gonna get into trouble.
You knew the dangers.
Over time,
you're gonna get all breathy.
Yes.
Oh amazing. Gosh. Okay. So, am I gonna get into trouble for anything that I've said today?
I don't think so. No, but
not at all.
They could use a trip to Marina.
But they could.
I mean, I'm such a Marina fan. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they could. She's so gorgeous, and she just skates for a little bit pitched forward, and I just, and so they don't match. And so until that gets fixed, the rest will be tough. But they're gorgeous, and there's a lot of potential there.
Is that the problem with the Italians? Because if you watch the Italians do the Midnight Blues, they're so on point, but she's taller for him and pitched forward.
Okay, so I'm going to quote Scott again.
Okay.
And pretend this was my idea.
Agree, Scott Moyer, yes.
Yeah. She doesn't bend her knees like he does. So she's actually not taller than him, but she looks taller than him because she doesn't go down as much as he does. So I don't know if that's true because I haven't seen enough. Well, it's Scott Moyer, so it must be true. But they have different styles from each other. And you got to fix that before you can move forward. You have to at least skate the same.
There's sort of a cognitive appreciation for me that I'll look at the score sheet and see, oh yes, they did get that level, or oh yes, they did get this small thing, but it leaves less of an emotional impact for me. And this is not to call anyone out by name, but I love Barbara, and she has this enormous performative personality. And I didn't know, in the rink, if you've got that big, amazing energy there, I wonder if sometimes it's hard for the team to match it. If she brings that, and
if she's louder than the team.
I don't know,
in the environment.
Maybe.
Yeah, because there can only be one star in the environment.
Unless you're fighting that energy.
It has to be the talent. Good question.
Did you ever change your sort of approach with certain skaters, with your sort of temperament or approach based on theirs? Or you just kind of do what you do and...
I think that's a good question too. I think I do a bit of both. I think I am what I am, but I also think I'm a bit of a chameleon too, in that I try and connect with my skater on in a place where they'll receive me. And so I think I have different relationships with each skater. I mean, I know there are some consistencies, but I think I change depending on what they're like.
Because if you're choreographing in the same season for a Tara Lipinski and a Lu Chen, I'm going to guess the energy they're bringing to the process is both very different.
Well, I mean, and I mean, Lulu barely spoke English, so we had to connect on a completely different level. It was just really, and age and everything. I mean, I'm going to relate differently to a 14 or 15-year-old than, to somebody older as well, right? I mean, you break out from that maternal, well, I guess I'm always maternal in some ways, but I certainly related differently to Katerina than I did,
to Tara, yeah.
Than to Tara, yeah.
Sweet, naive Louis Armstrong program. We were just bringing out her freshness on the ice.
That program made people so mad when she competed with it, but they have to understand that we didn't make it for competition. It was like the third or fourth number in Stars on Ice. It was just a little piece of candy.
Yeah. Sometimes the audience wants a bit of love.
She couldn't help it that she was so sexy. She just went out there. It was Debbie Thomas's last competition, and she just had to go like this. And
that was sort of the whole point of the number. It's like, I barely have to move, and you're all just going to drop to your knees for me, right? It was just a little piece of fluff and candy. We had fun with it.
She couldn't help it that the judges put her over Debbie. It wasn't her fault. It was just
exactly. It's like it was. Well, one of our muses, I think, was the cartoon character. Oh gosh, now I'm going to forget. Yeah, Jessica Rabbit.
Amazing.
Don't blame me. I'm just drawn this way. I mean, that was
amazing.
It was adorable, yeah.
Sandra, you allegedly like a handsome man. How about Baudry and Sorensen from Canada? What would you do with them?
Oh gosh.
Put them in movies.
Yeah, right? Like she could.
Well, David Wilson told me he used to have long hair.
He did.
It was pretty great. Now, don't put me in this position. Yeah. I mean, just like with everybody else, I haven't really been watching skating for a couple of years, so I just saw them for the first time. So I would need to watch them again, but I thought they were great and very sweet. Their first Olympics and all of
Marie
that.
France will call you. You'll come up with some ideas for them for next.
No, they don't. They don't need my help. That's for sure. That school doesn't need my help. By God, nobody does. I don't know if you can see if the lights changing here. It's magic hour right now, and
it's quite artistic. Yeah,
the sun is shining on a bunch of buildings and then reflecting on me, and then the moon's up there. So it's pretty.
Sandra went. She went skating with David Wilson outdoors the other day. Just as one does.
Oh, lovely.
I did at the city hall. Because I have to get my sea legs back. I haven't been on the ice. Well, I was on the ice for about 5 minutes last summer, and then the last time was Battle of the Blades a year ago, November. So I have to get my sea legs for the show in Spain that we're doing March 19th. Is that what it is? Yeah, we're leaving on the 5th, so we're making a show for Javi. And so I thought I better get out in the ice. So we went to City Hall, skated outdoors. It was fun.
And did you like the Rio program? Jonathan is obsessed with the Rio program from.
This was the third Canadian team.
I missed them. I missed them, and I have to go see them. I was flipping back. I missed them.
Well, and it was confusing.
So we have a live show where we were watching the Tessa and Scott feed with the viewers because Scott Moyer is hilarious to watch when he commentates because Tessa is so prepared and polite and that she's written out 17 pages of notes and Scott's just off the cuff and blunt and just the marriage of the two is fantastic.
They were lovely. They were so good. It was informative. It was interesting. They were kind to almost everybody.
Except for that lift that they did at the Ilderton Carnival. When Scott brought that up, he almost
But I don't think he even meant to be mean about it. It wasn't mean-spirited. It's
not an insult, just a fact.
Well, and it's not to slam positive commentary, but if everyone's great and everyone's lovely, then I don't understand why there are so many different scores. So help me understand in the pattern that this.
And they really did. They were really, really helpful, and of course, Tanith is fantastic. So I thought the dance event in both countries was covered really well. What were we talking about? We were talking about
The third Canadian.
The third
team.
Canadian, and I missed them because I was flipping back and forth, and I don't know, maybe anyway. But I thought their costumes were great. I saw them in the Kiss and Cry, and so they're a team that I want to go look at again. Just because
it was this sort of Birds of Paradise dance, and it was, again, some parts were a little camp. I just liked that it was different. I just liked that it was, again, in that Montreal way. It was the way for me to remember the program. They do a cool opening lift. It was a nice concept, this idea of the birds. It was just something different, and I was so there for it. Yeah,
and even
and
the color combination of their costumes was not typical. It was fresh and unique. And it's like all these really brilliant people. I mean, there's nothing more fun than a collaboration, and that's what I envy of that school, because they clearly collaborate so beautifully with such wonderful people who just bring in great ideas and great energy. Like with the Zorro, I could hear, Hugo searching for the perfect sound effect and then deciding what color to put them in. And like, just that you want to be a fly on the wall, listening to those conversations from where it came, from the blank slate to these very unique ideas.
So what was your moment of the competition? For me, I have to say, everyone's going to say Gabby and Guillaume, and I'm going to go with their rhythm dance, even though I thought the free came alive the most for me last night. But aside from them, I have to say that I thought that Smart and Diaz had such a moment where they reached a personal best. And I thought that it was just fantastic to watch that at the Olympics.
Gosh, I don't know that I had one like you. Of course, I was really happy for Gabby and Guillaume to have their moment the way they wanted it in both dances, and it was so deserving. Maddie and Zach and I felt like I was watching their personal journey. And I really appreciated that in both. Just Maddie learning to take command, the two of them putting aside what happened 4 years ago. That must have been there. I just felt like they brought me in to their personal journey.
How about you, John?
I mean, I'm basic. I'm just going to say the French free dance, all of it, and the rhythm dance. But truly, I've been a big fan of Madison and Zach, and I know they may have even had their, goals were set even higher, perhaps. But just to know that overall they maintained a sort of focus and composure at a big pressure event like this, it was just really nice to see so many teams doing their best at the Olympics, because it doesn't often happen.
No,
understandably so.
They were all, for the most part, skating free, and that is so hard in the moment. And even Viktoria and Nikita, after the team event, to skate the way they did in the rhythm dance and in their free dance with abandon, it's like, good for you. Because they could have just withered. They could have just withered and let insecurity or anger, whatever, take over, or their brains take over, and they didn't. So there were a lot of great performances.
While we have you here, what was it like for you watching Nathan Chen? Because I don't think everyone knows, but you're a huge Nathan Chen fan.
I'm a total Nathan Chen fan. I fell in love with Nathan when we got to work with him at Una's show. And what impressed me so back then was that he's got both sides of his brain. He's the mathematician, cerebral guy who can light up and read an audience. And so he's got a talent that's beyond the beyond, and he's just a really good guy too. He's just a really nice man and fun to work with. And so I've been kind of, rooting for him ever since. And damn, he put it down.
I think going back to Elton John was brilliant and the right decision for him. And
yeah, and it's kind of what it's what the event needed.
Mm-hmm.
It needed some great energy and dance and
feel good.
Feel good. Yeah. I mean, we didn't need an introspective, dramatic thing from him. We needed that, selfishly speaking. And the short program, wow, just beautiful. Just a beautiful piece. And his nuance, just the little things that I know he loved to do. And it's just so much fun to see that when he's so committed to all those things. So yeah, I'm a total Nathan fan. And all three of the Japanese men, just wow. And Jason.
Yeah.
Yeah, the depth of all of that final group was just really lovely.
Are you excited to see anyone in the pairs? I mean, people forget that you were a pair skater, Sandra. So
yes.
We don't. Yeah.
No, please, nobody start Googling. Pairs event. I feel like the pairs generally, and I think I've said this to you before, struggle to make choreographic gains because I feel like the rules just strangle them. And so anybody that pushes through that, I admire, who is able to push through that. Sometimes it's just so much of a numbers game,
right?
That it's disappointing. I mean, that's why the dancers were so impressive, was because the performances were beyond a numbers game, weren't they? I mean, you forgot that they were doing elements and that they had to do all of this stuff. And this was this, level and that level. I feel like with the pairs, you're more aware of all of that. And it's too bad. So who am I rooting for? I don't know I don't know. I just hope everybody has a good skate.
Yeah.
And, we'll see where it lands. Yeah,
there are some good teams up there, but yeah, if it's the minute someone hits a beautiful position, it's as if the rules tell them they're not allowed to hold it. Now do 55 variations on it.
And it's just like everything has to be torqued.
Yeah.
You gotta hit a gazillion positions in your spin. You gotta torque the death spiral till it's dead. I mean, death spirals weren't created to do that. And so everybody's just torquing it instead of big, beautiful lines. They're like closing in their bodies and just, women's heads aren't, now I'm sounding like an old fart. Women's heads aren't touching the ice. And, it's like that was never meant to do that. And I'll shut up now because I also really admire them. I think, well, we'll see.
Sandra, it's this whole thing about ice dance also, like the fact that like twizzles are now the most important thing in all of skating.
Yeah.
Like what an odd move to put so much emphasis on.
But somehow the dance event needed form.
Yes.
It needed all of those checkpoints. And so that elevated, that plus the players elevated that event. I think the pairs have just had a really tough time navigating these rules.
Yeah.
Now, I think that the variety and inventiveness in the lifts is pretty darn interesting, but they overdo that too. So then it's like, it's going to come down, or it's going to. It's like there are some things where more isn't more.
Right.
Yeah,
and they don't have the opportunity in this system to just be beautiful always. It's really hard to navigate and to find that.
Yeah. We'll be watching. Your light is dimming on Magic Hour.
I know. Do you
Magic
want me to
over.
No. Like, I know.
Thank you
I don't have one of those lights. I don't know. Anyway.
Sexy.
I can turn on my phone.
No,
you've illuminated us with your knowledge.
Okay.
Sandra.
So, edit out